cold wind rolled over the plains like a warning from the mountains, scraping dust against the ranch fences and rattling the dry wooden boards of the Harper homestead. Folks in Willow Ridge always said trouble could be smelled before it arrived, like iron before a storm or smoke before a fire. And that morning, as the sun bled its first light across the frostbitten valley, Luke Harper felt that trouble rising in his bones. He stood by the horse corral, breath misting in the frozen air, eyes heavy with the kind of exhaustion that only grief could carve into a man. His father had been buried not 2 weeks earlier, taken by pneumonia after years of breaking his back holding this land together. Now the ranch, every fence post, every acre, every debt, rested on Luke's shoulders, a weight he felt with every aching inhale. But it wasn't the burden of the ranch alone that made the morning feel wrong. It was the silence, a silence that didn't belong in a place where horses usually snorted, where wind creaked through rails, where life shouldn't feel paused. That was when he saw the tracks, deep, fresh, leading up to the barn. A man's boots, heavy steps, not his, not the ranch hands, either. He had let them go after his father passed because he couldn't afford wages anymore. He felt his heartbeat prick sharply. Someone was here. He walked slowly, cautious, one hand hovering over the holster at his belt. As he approached the barn door, a whisper-soft sound stopped him cold. Breathing. Not a man's. Softer. Uneven. Hurt. Luke's fingers curled around the barn door and pulled it back with a long, groaning creak. A woman collapsed onto the hay-covered floor, trembling violently under layers of torn buckskin and frozen mud. Her face was half covered with soot and bruises, lips split, eyes wide, but barely conscious. She looked native, Apache, maybe Navajo, but in that moment she looked more like a ghost than any enemy. Her voice scraped out like a dying ember. "Please don't do that." He froze, not knowing what she meant. She grimaced, raising a hand weakly as if expecting a blow, as if she had been beaten for hours or days. Luke crouched down slowly, keeping his voice low. "I'm not going to hurt you." Her eyes flickered, confused. She tried crawling backward, but her arms gave out. Her legs shook uncontrollably, like she'd been running from hell itself. Luke hesitated. Folks in town feared tensions with the Apache after a group of settlers had gone missing near the Mudstone Ridge. Rumors spread fast, too fast, and fear made enemies out of shadows. If word got out that an Apache woman was on his ranch, he didn't finish the thought. He lifted her gently, and she winced as though even kindness caused pain. The barn was freezing. She wouldn't last an hour. Luke grabbed his father's old wool coat, the one still hanging near the stall, and wrapped it around her trembling frame. Her breathing eased slightly. Not enough. He carried her into the house, boots thudding across the wooden porch. Every step felt like a decision he couldn't undo. Every heartbeat reminded him that the town didn't forgive easy. Inside, he laid her near the stove, fed fresh logs, and watched the fire catch. Her eyes slowly opened again, dark, alert, searching. She looked at him like she was trying to decide if he was another danger. "You safe here," Luke murmured. She stared at him, studying his face carefully, as if determining the truth behind every syllable. Then she whispered a single word. "Why?" It nearly broke him. Why help her? Why risk a town's judgment? Why shoulder a stranger's troubles when he could barely manage his own? Luke didn't know the answer. Not yet. Instead, he said the only thing that felt honest. "Because you'd freeze to death out there." For a moment, her eyes softened. Just a flicker, a shard of trust. But before anything else could be spoken, a hard knock shook the front door. 3 loud blasts that rattled through the entire cabin. Luke stiffened. The woman tensed, pulling the coat tighter. Another pound hit the door. "Luke Harper," a deep voice called. "Sheriff Boyd." Of all times. Luke stood slowly, breath caught halfway in his lungs. Sheriff Boyd was a good man, but a cautious one. He'd been on edge since the settlers vanished. Seeing an injured native woman inside the Harper home might light a fuse neither of them could put out. Luke whispered sharply to the woman, "Stay quiet. Don't move." His heart hammered, but he tried to keep his voice calm. "Please, trust me." She looked into his eyes, and for the first time didn't flinch. Luke opened the door. Sheriff Boyd stood on the porch, coat flapping in the cold wind, eyes sharp and tired. "Mornin', Luke," he said, looking over the young rancher's shoulder. "You all right? Town's buzzin'. Folks say they spotted Apache tracks near your land." Luke felt his throat tighten. The sheriff's gaze drifted past him, scanning the cabin. "That's so," Luke said, forcing a neutral tone. "Yeah," Boyd muttered. "I'm checking in on ranches, making sure nobody's hiding anything that could spark trouble." He stepped forward to enter. Luke blocked the doorway. For a split second, neither man moved. Boyd raised a brow. "Everything okay, son?" Luke's pulse thundered. Behind him, the woman remained silent, motionless, hidden behind the stove. Everything in him screamed to tell Boyd the truth. Everything else screamed the opposite. Their eyes locked, and Luke uttered words that would alter the next weeks of his life, the ranch, and the town itself. "Sheriff, there's something I need to say." Luke didn't breathe for a moment. Even the wind outside seemed to stop, waiting for his next words. Sheriff Boyd watched him closely, reading every twitch of his jaw, every shift in his stance. Luke finally exhaled. "I'm fine, Sheriff. Just been dealing with the ranch on my own. Harder than I expected." Boyd's expression softened for a moment. "I know it's been rough since your pa passed." His voice grumbled with genuine sympathy. "But these lands aren't safe right now. I need to check every homestead." Luke's heart thumped painfully. "Sheriff, I'd rather you didn't come in. House is a mess. Ain't exactly ready for company." Boyd squinted. Suspicion flashed in his eyes like a match being struck. "Luke, you sure everything's all right?" A floorboard creaked behind Luke. His blood ran cold. The sheriff stepped forward again. "Who's in there?" Luke swallowed hard. "Just the stove settling. Wood pops when it's cold." Boyd didn't seem convinced. But after a long, tense moment, he let out a breath and leaned back slightly. "All right, just be cautious. If you see anything at all, you come get me." Luke nodded. "I will." The sheriff hesitated one last time, then turned and walked toward his horse. Luke didn't move until Boyd mounted up, tugged the reins, and rode off toward the ridge. Only then did Luke shut the door and let his shaking breath escape. The woman lay half-hidden near the stove, eyes wide, body frozen with fear. She had been silent as stone, listening to every word. Luke crouched near her. "You okay?" She nodded faintly. "He would kill me," she whispered. "They all would." Her voice wasn't angry. It was resigned, as if she had known too much hatred to believe any other outcome. Luke looked away, guilt twisting inside him. The truth was, she wasn't wrong. Willow Ridge wasn't kind to strangers, especially those who didn't fit into the neat borders of what folks called safe. "What happened to you?" Luke asked quietly. Her gaze drifted to the fire, shadows moving across her bruised cheek. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then, with difficulty, she whispered, "Men. Not from your town. Riders. 3 of them. They chased me, took me. I escaped." Her voice trembled. "They still look for me." Luke felt anger flare through him. Not the blind fury of violence, but the deep, steady burn of injustice. "Why were they after you?" he asked. She hesitated again. Her fingers clutched the coat tighter. "I know something," she whispered. "Something they don't want people to learn." Luke waited silently, giving her space. This wasn't a story she could force out. But instead of continuing, she slowly reached for the canteen on the floor. Her hands shook too much to lift it, so Luke helped her drink. She took only a sip. "What's your name?" he asked softly. Her eyes lifted to his. "Nara." He nodded. "I'm Luke." She repeated the name quietly, testing it. Something in her expression softened. Hours passed. Luke tended to her wounds with clean cloths and warm water, though some cuts were deep enough to make him wince. She never complained. Not once. Only small, sharp breaths escaped her lips when pain surged. Her calmness unsettled him. People cried. People screamed. But Nara endured pain like she had learned long ago that the world didn't listen to suffering. As he wrapped her arm, she watched him with guarded curiosity. "Why help me?" she asked again. Luke tied the knot in the bandage. "Because no one deserves what you've been through." Her eyes drifted downward. Many think I do. Not me. She looked at him then, really looked. It was the first moment her fear loosened, replaced with something fragile. Trust. Barely formed, but there. Before Luke could say more, a distant sound split the air. A horse. Fast. Coming up the road. Nara sat up abruptly, panic flashing across her face. Damn. Luke moved to the window and peered out. Dust rose behind two riders barreling toward the ranch. Not the sheriff. Not anyone from town. These men moved with purpose. And danger. Luke felt cold crawl up his spine. He turned back to Nara. You can't stay in here. Her breathing quickened. They will kill you if they find me. I'm not letting them take you. She shook her head, terrified. Luke, please don't do that. Don't protect me. Not against men like them. You don't know what they are. He tightened his jaw. I know enough. The riders were almost at the gate. Luke grabbed his father's rifle from the mantel. Nara stared at him, horrified, as he checked the chamber. She whispered desperately, if you stand in their way, they will burn this house, they will destroy everything you have left. Luke didn't stop loading the rifle. This ranch survived my father's storms. It can survive this. She reached out, gripping his sleeve with surprising strength. Her voice broke. Please don't do that. Her plea froze him. She wasn't begging for her life. She was begging for his. Luke placed a hand over hers. Nara, I can't just hand you over. She looked at him with a pained expression, one filled with sorrow and the weight of someone who'd lost too many people already. The riders reached the front yard, raining and hard, dust swirling around their boots as they dismounted. Luke moved to the door. Stay hidden, he whispered. She nodded, though her eyes shimmered with fear and something else, a heavy, unspoken truth. Luke stepped outside, gun lowered but ready. The two men stood tall and rough, wearing coats stained with dust and old blood. Their eyes scanned the ranch with predatory focus. One of them smirked. Mornin', Harper. We're looking for a runaway. Luke kept his voice steady. Ain't seen anyone. The taller rider stepped closer, boots crunching on gravel. Funny. We tracked her right to your land. The other added, she ain't hard to spot. Apache. Hurt. Scared. Dangerous. Luke's grip tightened on the rifle. She's not here. Both men exchanged a look, a silent conversation full of arrogance. Then the tall one grinned darkly. Mind if we take a look inside? Luke's heart pounded, but his voice remained firm. Yeah, I mind. The air thickened, a storm spiraling tighter and tighter. Inside the house, Nara listened to every word, her future twisting in the space between breaths. Outside, three men stood on the edge of violence. Everything depended on the next heartbeat. The taller rider took another step, his boots thudding against the frozen ground, eyes narrowing into slits of suspicion. Luke steadied his breathing. The rifle felt heavy, not in his hands, but in the consequences it carried. You really going to stand in our way, boy? The tall man asked, voice thick with threat. Luke didn't flinch. My land. My rules. The second rider spat in the dirt. That's a big talk for someone standing alone. Luke felt the tension coil in his muscles. I'm not alone. For a moment, he wondered why he said that. Nara certainly couldn't fight in her condition, and there was no one else within miles. But maybe he wasn't talking about people. Maybe he meant something else. Courage, conviction, the memory of his father. The tall rider glared at him, then at the house. We're going inside. Move. Luke raised the rifle slightly, not enough to point, but enough to make intention clear. You step foot in that house, and I'll treat you like a man breaking into my home. Silence. Cold. Still. Deadly. Then the tall one laughed, a harsh sound cutting through the wind. You're a fool, Harper. No, Luke answered. Just a man defending what's right. The rider's expressions hardened. They positioned themselves like wolves preparing to strike. A fight was seconds away, but then a low whistle drifted across the yard. Sharp, cutting, unmistakably human, yet blended with the wind like something wild. The riders froze. Luke turned his head toward the tree line. A figure stepped from shadows. He moved like part of the wilderness, silent, deliberate, every motion controlled. He wore a deerskin jacket, braids tied with bone, and carried a carved bow strapped across his back. His posture radiated steady confidence, not aggression. His expression unreadable. Nara. Luke knew instantly this man was connected to her. The riders stiffened, hands drifting toward their pistols. The man stopped a few paces behind Luke, but not too close, far enough to show independence, close enough to show alliance. "Who the hell are you?" the tall rider barked. The man didn't answer immediately. His eyes flicked between them, studying everything, their stance, their hands, their breathing. Finally, he spoke. "Your trail ends here." His voice was calm, not threatening, just true. The smaller rider scoffed. "Trail ends? You think one Apache is gonna—" Before he could finish, the man drew an arrow with inhuman speed. The shaft appeared in his hand like a thought made real. He didn't pull it back, didn't aim it, just held it in a way that suggested he didn't need to. Luke swallowed. This stranger was dangerous, but his presence felt steady, purposeful. The tall rider cursed under his breath. "This ain't your fight." The man's eyes hardened. "It became mine the moment you hunted her." Luke's pulse quickened. "Her?" he repeated, glancing at him. But the man didn't answer. He simply stepped closer, not toward the riders, but beside Luke. A silent message. "You're not alone." Luke felt unexpected relief wash over him. For the first time in days, someone stood with him, even if they had no words between them. The tall rider snarled, "We'll come back with more men." The stranger nodded once. "Then bring enough." A standoff lingered in the icy air. A breath too long, a heartbeat too sharp. Finally, the riders mounted their horses. They glared down at Luke. "This ain't over." Luke kept the rifle steady. "It never is." The riders kicked their horses and thundered back down the road, dust trailing behind them. As soon as they disappeared, Luke lowered the rifle, breath collapsing out of him. His hands shook. The stranger put away the arrow and crossed his arms quietly. Luke turned to him. "You saved my life." The man shook his head. "You saved hers." His gaze drifted to the house. "She inside?" Luke nodded. "Injured. Weak. She won't last a day without help." Something shifted in the man's expression, a softness barely visible. "She is Nara," he said softly. "My sister." Luke blinked in surprise. "Your sister?" The man nodded. "My name is Kada." Luke felt a wave of relief. A piece of the puzzle made sense now. "I'm Luke Harper." Kada inclined his head respectfully. Then, without another word, he walked past Luke and stepped into the cabin. Nara looked up as he entered, her eyes widening, not in fear, but in profound relief. She whispered his name in her native tongue, voice trembling. Kada knelt beside her, his hands gentle as he examined her wounds. A brief conversation passed between them, soft, melodic words Luke didn't understand. A bond, a history, a family's weight. Luke remained at the doorway, unsure whether to enter or give them space. But Nara looked at him and extended her hand weakly. "Come," she said. Luke stepped inside. The warmth of the stove wrapped around him, and for the first time since this began, he felt the faintest flicker of hope. What were those men after? Luke asked. Kada exchanged a glance with his sister. Their silence was long, heavy, filled with pain and something deeper, fear. Finally, Nara answered. Her voice cracked. "They killed families near Mudstone Ridge. Settlers. Our people were blamed. But they did it. Those men. They took me because I saw." Luke felt the world tilt slightly. "You witnessed it?" She nodded slowly. "They chased me to keep it hidden." Kada's jaw tightened. "If they tell the sheriff she fled from us, the town will believe them. War will begin." Luke's stomach twisted. Boyd, the riders, the town's fear, the tension building for months. He understood now. "If we don't expose them," Luke murmured, "the town will turn on your people. And you'll all be blamed for something you didn't do." Kada nodded once. A storm, bigger than the weather, bigger than 3 men, was forming. Luke looked at Nara. She was fragile, shaking, barely able to sit upright. And yet she was the only witness, the only truth, the only chance to stop bloodshed. Kada's voice broke the silence. "We must protect her until she can speak." Luke nodded. "I'll help." Nara looked at him with disbelief. "You would risk your life for people not your own?" Luke held her gaze. "Right is right. Wrong is wrong. Doesn't matter who bleeds. A soft, grateful smile touched her lips, a tiny warmth in a bitter world. But the peace didn't last. Hoofbeats echoed again in the distance. More riders. Kata rose instantly, eyes sharp. They return. Luke grabbed his rifle. Then we need to move. Now. Nara tried to stand, but collapsed. Luke caught her gently. Lean on me. Kata grabbed her other arm. Together, they stepped outside into the icy air. The dust cloud on the horizon grew larger. More than 2 riders. Maybe 5. Maybe 10. Luke felt the cold bite into his skin. This wasn't just trouble. This was war coming straight at his door. Luke tightened his grip around Nara as the dust cloud widened across the horizon. Kata stood beside him, bow ready, shoulders tense, but steady as the wind. The temperature seemed to drop with each passing second. Danger had a way of freezing the air long before the first shot was fired. How many? Luke asked quietly. Kata narrowed his eyes. 7. Maybe 8. Luke cursed under his breath. We can't stand our ground here. Not with Nara hurt. Kata nodded. There's a place. In the ravine behind your ranch. Hidden. Safe for now. Luke didn't hesitate. Lead the way. They moved quickly, Luke supporting Nara as Kata guided them through the rear of the ranch, slipping past the tool shed, crossing a patch of brittle winter grass, and heading toward the ravine that cut deep into the land. The horses of the incoming riders thundered closer, their hooves pounding like drums of wrath. Nara tried to speak. Luke, leave me behind. They want me. You can escape. Luke shook his head fiercely. Not happening. Her voice trembled. Please. Nara, he interrupted, breath coming out in hard clouds. Don't ask me to throw you to wolves. Not after all this. Her eyes glistened with emotion she'd been holding back for days. She looked away, as if afraid that meeting his gaze would weaken her resolve. Kata moved ahead, eyes scanning for threats. Faster, he urged. They know this land. They will circle behind us. Luke felt Nara's legs wobble. She stumbled, but he caught her again. The ravine was near. He could see its shadowy dip in the earth just ahead. Safety, temporary as it might be. But safety didn't come first. Gunfire cracked across the open sky. The first bullet hit the tree behind them, exploding bark. The second struck the ground near Luke's boots, kicking dirt into his face. He turned, firing a warning shot, not aiming to kill, just to slow them down. Move, he shouted. Kata took Nara's other arm, and together they ran the final stretch, diving into the ravine as bullets screamed above their heads. The dipped earth shielded them. For now, Luke pressed his back against the cold rock, chest heaving. Nara leaned against him, weak but alive. Kata crouched beside them, eyes fixed upward. The riders reached the edge of the ravine, silhouettes black against the pale winter sky. The tall rider's voice echoed down. You can't hide her, Harper. She dies, and this whole land stays peaceful. Luke's blood boiled. Peaceful? You killed families and blamed her people. Truth is what folks believe, the man sneered. And they believe us. Nara shut her eyes, pain twisting her face. Luke, they'll kill you too. Not if we speak first, Luke said through clenched teeth. Kata placed a hand on his shoulder. To speak, we must survive this day. The riders began descending into the ravine, careful but confident. They had numbers. They had guns. They thought they had victory. Luke steadied his rifle. This ends now. The first rider reached the halfway point. Kata released an arrow. It struck the man's shoulder, sending him yelling backward. The other scrambled. Shots rang out. Echoes bounced between the rocks. Luke fired at the dirt near the rider's boots, forcing them to take cover. He moved without hesitation. Instinct, purpose, and a fierce determination guiding him more than skill. Kata fired another arrow, hitting the rock near a rider's head, sending shards flying. A warning. He could have taken the man's life, but he didn't. Nara stood suddenly, gripping the rock wall to steady herself. Nara, Luke hissed, reaching to pull her back. But she shook her head weakly. They want me. They follow me. If I walk out, they focus on me, not you. Luke grabbed her wrist. No, you're not dying after everything you survived. Her voice was barely audible, but filled with a painful truth. I don't want more blood on my name. I don't want them killing you because of me. Luke's voice softened. You're worth protecting. For a moment, everything froze. The riding boots above, the tension in the air, the icy breath of winter wrapping around them. Then Kata spoke with calm certainty. We escape. Together. He pointed deeper into the ravine, a narrow fissure hidden behind boulders. Through there, it leads to the old creek trail. It will bring us out near Willow Ridge. Luke understood instantly. The sheriff. Kata nodded. He must hear Nara's truth before the riders do. Another bullet came ricocheting off the rock, reminding them time was slipping away. Luke lifted Nara. Let's go. They slipped through the narrow passage, scraping past stone, breath tight in the confined space. The riders' shouts grew dim behind them as the ravine swallowed their voices. Minutes later, they spilled out into a clearing near the frozen creek. Willow Ridge was still distant, but reachable. Almost there, Luke said, but fate wasn't done testing them. The tall rider appeared at the edge of the clearing, horse rearing beneath him. He had circled ahead. He pointed his gun straight at Nara. No! Luke shouted, stepping between them. The rider snarled. Move. She dies here. Kata drew an arrow, but the rider cocked his gun. You fire, I shoot. The standoff tightened like a noose. Nara stepped forward, trembling but resolute. I will go with you. Don't hurt them. Luke grabbed her arm. Nara, don't. She whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. Too many people have died because I ran. The rider smirked triumphantly. Luke's heart pounded. He couldn't let this end like this. Not after everything. Not after she trusted him. With a burst of instinctive courage, Luke lunged toward the rider's gun arm, just as Kata released the arrow. The bullet fired, hitting Luke's shoulder, spinning him back in blinding pain. Nara screamed. Kata's arrow struck true, knocking the rider backward off his horse. The man fell, gun skidding away. He groaned, not dead, but defeated. Kata rushed to Luke, catching him before he collapsed. Stay with us. Luke gritted his teeth through the burning pain. Nara, is she safe? Nara knelt beside him, tears falling freely. Luke, look at me. He forced a weak smile. Told you I wasn't leaving you behind. Her hand cupped his cheek gently, tenderly. You foolish, brave man. Kata mounted the rider's loose horse. We ride to town. Sheriff Boyd must hear the truth now. Luke nodded, leaning against Nara as Kata helped them both up onto another horse. They rode hard toward Willow Ridge. The sheriff's eyes widened when he saw Luke bleeding, Nara trembling, and Kata guiding the horse. The rider they had defeated was dragged behind them, bound. Luke managed to speak. Sheriff, she knows who killed the settlers. It wasn't her people. Nara whispered the truth, voice trembling but clear. Boyd's face grew pale as her story unfolded. By the time she finished, the sheriff removed his hat in shame. We nearly made war on the wrong people. Luke exhaled, relief washing heavy through him. The truth spread, slowly, painfully, but it reached the town before bloodshed could. In the days that followed, Luke healed. Kata stayed by Nara's side, and Nara stayed by Luke's bedside longer than she ever admitted to anyone. Before she and Kata returned to their people, she stood alone with Luke outside the ranch, watching the pink horizon of dawn. Thank you, she whispered. Luke nodded. Take care of yourself. She hesitated. If you ever ride near the Red Valley, look for me. He smiled softly, bittersweet. I will. She rode off with Kata, leaving a quiet,